What is up, my Pika crew? This is the ThePikaWu and welcome to another Pokemon Wi-Fi battle. This one's going to be an overused tier match against a guy called Ghostly Shadows. It's a really great match and my first OU tier match on this channel, so I'm very excited to share this battle with you guys. So let's get right into the team preview analysis. Now, looking at my opponent's team, it's going to be a balanced offensive team. You can see he's got some dedicated defensive Pokemon in the shape of Venusaur and his Mew. And he's also got some pretty threatening offensive Pokemon as well. For example, his Azumarill and his Victini. The biggest threat is definitely going to be his Victini because he can deal a ton of damage against all my defensive Pokemon because of a diverse move pool that can basically hurt my Fire Grass Water Core really effectively. Now on my end, you can see I also have a balanced offensive team. I got 3 dedicated defensive Pokemon in the shape of Chesnaught, Slowbro, and Heatran. And the goal of this team is to chip away at my opponent's defenses and try to sweep with my Manectric. So let's get right into each of my individual Pokemon. You can see my Manectric is just a standard special attacking Pokemon with Thunderbolt, Volt Switch, Hidden Power, Ice, and Flamethrower. I actually choose Flamethrower over Overheat because I don't really like that special attack drop. My next Pokemon is my Heatran, and it actually has kind of a unique moveset, and that's because it deals with Charizards and Talonflame with Stone Edge. Also has Lava Plume, Toxic, and Taunt, and that's there to shut down some boosting Pokemon like Clefable. My third Pokemon is my Landorus, and it's my Wall Breaker and my Stealth Rocker. It has max attack and adamant nature with base 145 stat, so that Earthquake is going to deal a ton of damage against almost any Pokemon. I also have U-Turn, which is a really strong move, especially when I'm predicting a switch because I gain momentum. My fourth Pokemon is going to be my Slowbro. It has Slack Off, Thunder Wave, Psyshock, and Scald. It's just a standard defensive Pokemon, and it recovers every time I switch out due to my Regenerator ability. My fifth Pokemon, my Chesnaught, that's actually going to be my defensive wall, and it's there to set up spikes and be very annoying in general, mostly because of the Spiky Shield and Leech Seed combination, and Drain Punch is there just for some additional recovery and a damage-inducing move. And my last Pokemon is my Clefable. It's a standard boosting sweeper with Soft Boiled, Thunder Wave, Calm Mind, and Moon Blast, and it's really threatening, especially against teams that don't really have a Clefable counter or a Pokemon that uses Taunt. So that's going to be my team, and I hope you guys enjoy the battle. So I'm going to lead off with my Manectric as my opponent leads off with Victini. And like I said in the team preview earlier on, a big threat to my team is Victini. And especially because I don't know what kind of set he is. If he is a Choice Scarf set or a Spec set, I am basically forced to switch out. Because if he is Scarfed, he can outspeed me and take me out in one hit. So I'm going to go for a very safe play and bring in my Heatran, because I know I can take any single one hit. He actually predicts my Heatran switch and goes for the Focus Blast, and the way that he aggressively predicts my switch implies he's choiced in some way, and that damage definitely confirms that he is a Choice Spec set. So because I thought he was going to switch out, knowing that he's locked into a fighting type move, I actually went for the Lava Plume to hit anything incoming. Maybe his Landorus Therian and maybe Fish for a burn, but unfortunately that doesn't really work out. Now, I'm going to go ahead and switch out into a Pokemon that can actually handle that Focus Blast, and that is my Landorus Therian form. And that's because I resist the hit, and I can set up Stealth Rocks on the switch, but my opponent actually brings in Mew instead. This works out fine because I know he's probably going to switch out because he doesn't want to take an Earthquake or a U-Turn, and I can freely set up my Stealth Rocks, as my opponent actually brings in his own Landorus. And with the Intimidate, I'm at -1, so I'm not really going to go for the offensive and try to take down or deal as much damage against my opponent's Landorus, and instead I'm actually going to switch out. So I switch into my Heatran mostly as death fodder because there's two things he's either going to go for: an offensive attacking move or the Stealth Rocks, and either way Heatran's a good switch in. So unfortunately for me, my Heatran does go down. That poses a lot of problems because Heatran is a very pivotal Pokemon in terms of my defensive core. So the fact that I can bring in any Pokemon means that I can bring in my Chesnaught, and that means I can start setting up some entry hazards, and I can get a free Spikes on the switch because I know Landorus really can't do much damage against my Chesnaught, and he's going to bring in his Venusaur. And Venusaur isn't really the greatest switch in either because I do have the Bulletproof ability, which means that I am immune of that Sludge Bomb. So naturally, Sludge Bomb would be super effective against Grass-type Pokemon, but with my ability, I'm totally immune of that hit. So he can't do much against me unless he has Hidden Power Fire. So that's why he actually switches out. So here, he brings in his Azumarill, and Azumarill is a really big threat to my entire team. I do have Slowbro to deal with it, but the main issue is if he is one of those unconventional Belly Drum sets, if he actually sets up on my switch to Slowbro, then I lose, because I have nothing that can deal with this Azumarill. So that's why I actually decided to stay in and go for the Leech Seed. I know I can deal with this Azumarill and take any one hit, and if he is a Belly Drum set and he goes for the Belly Drum, I actually don't lose, right? So that's why I stayed in. It does a ton of damage against me, and I'm basically just going to stall a little bit with the Spiky Shield to get some Leech Seed recovery, and my opponent knows that. Very smart play and goes into the Mew. Now, I don't know what set this Mew is, but he may carry a Stab Psychic type move, so that's why I'm just going to switch out, because I need to conserve my Chesnaught for later, because it basically walls a lot of his offensive Pokemon, for example, his Landorus. So I'm just going to go ahead and bring in my Manectric, because I know I can take any single hit, and I know this Mew is most likely defensive, and he probably does carry more support moves like Thunder Wave or some other move like that, so I know Manectric's a pretty safe switch in. He actually goes for the Defog, and that caught me off guard because I haven't seen many Mews in the OU metagame, and Defog is a really great move to have on a Mew for a support Mew, because now all those entry hazards that I set up are now out of play. So bringing in Manectric means that I can deal a lot of damage against my opponent's team, because I have a diverse move pool, right? I have Electric, Ice, and Fire for my coverage, and I want to just deal as much damage against that Mew, because once I take down that Mew, I can safely set up entry hazards, and they're there permanently. So that's why I went for the Thunderbolt. My opponent actually outplays me and goes into his Landorus on my Thunderbolt, and then goes into his Victini on my HP Ice. So a lot of great predictions on my opponent's part. Now, I want to conserve my Manectric for later, because like I said, it's a really great Pokemon to have late game to sweep, and I know I can't take out this Victini in one shot, even with a Thunderbolt. So I'm just going to go for the Volt Switch out into my Clefable, kind of as a pivot to take any one hit. I know I can bring in my Slowbro that can take both his Psychic and Fire type stab moves, but if he goes for the Thunderbolt there, then that really hurts me. So Clefable is the safest switch in. And I can just go for the Thunder Wave on the switch and cripple any one Pokemon. And luckily for me, it does actually cripple this Venusaur. And Venusaur does scare me out because he carries the potential Sludge Bomb, and that is super effective against my Clefable. Plus, he might go for the Sleep Powder as well. So I still don't know if he has the HP Fire or not, so I just want to confirm if he does have it or not by bringing in my Landorus T here, kind of as a pivot switch, because I know I can take any one single hit, and if he goes for the Hidden Power, or if he has the Hidden Power, he'd go for it now, predicting my Chesnaught switch in. And because he went for the Giga Drain there, that means he absolutely does not have that HP Fire. So that's very good information to know. My Landorus did take a lot of damage from that, but I think it is worth it to gain more information about my opponent's movesets. So I U-turn out, I go right into my Chesnaught because I know I can completely wall him. So at this point in the match, it's a very interesting situation because what me and my opponent are both doing is using our defensive Pokemon to wall each other's defensive Pokemon. For example, I wall his Venusaur completely with my Chesnaught, but at the same time he walls my Chesnaught completely with Mew. But I do have the edge in these matchups just because, for two reasons actually. One, I have entry hazards with Chesnaught, so I can set up spikes every time we're in this very stalemate situation, and that puts pressure on my opponent's team. Secondly, I also have Slowbro in the back of my team, and that deals with both the Mew and the Venusaur because I can Scald the Mew and Psyshock the Venusaur. So this is a very good situation right now, this Slowbro Mew matchup, because he only has two potential switch-ins. He has his Venusaur and his Bisharp, right? So if he wants to predict the Psyshock, he can bring in his Bisharp and force a switch. And if he wants to predict any other move, a Thunder Wave or a Scald, he can bring in his Venusaur to take the hit. So I have to go for the Thunder Wave, anticipating him to bring in Bisharp, And now I'm not going to go for the Side Shock because he can just recover back all that HP with Giga Drain. And I'm going to just switch out instead and bring in my Chesnaught, knowing that I can wall this Venusaur completely. And if he decides to switch out into any other Pokemon, I can generally take any one hit. And my opponent actually brings in his Bisharp on the double, which means he was actually anticipating me to go for the Psyshock, or scouting if I had the Psychic type move. This is really good because, one, he can't really deal much to me and I can just go for the Drain Punch. And two, it kind of conditions my opponent to bring in the Venusaur against my Slowbro every time I have this Slowbro Mew matchup. Because he doesn't see that I have the Psyshock and it worked previously. So by conditioning him into bringing in his Venusaur every time I have this Slowbro Mew matchup, I can actually go for the Psyshock, predicting the switch and try to take down the Venusaur. And once I take down the Venusaur, then my Manectric has an easier time dealing with my opponent's team. So here, you can see that I wall his Mew completely with my Slowbro, and we're at this specific matchup where now I'm pretty sure he's going to bring in his Venusaur to deal with my Slowbro. So I'm just going to go straight away for the Psyshock. So he's going to withdraw, and instead of actually bringing in his Venusaur, he outpredicts me. I thought I conditioned him into bringing in his Venusaur, especially because I didn't reveal that I had the Psyshock yet. But unfortunately, he makes the great play and goes straight into his Bisharp to be immune to the hit. Now, my opponent can really do anything he wants. He can go for the Swords Dance on the switch, he can go for the Iron Head or the knockoff just to deal some damage or get rid of my item. And I'm basically forced to bring in my Chesnaught because it's my only counter against this opponent's Bisharp. And he just goes ahead and goes for the knockoff, which is fine. I just need to conserve my Chesnaught at a decent amount of health so I can deal with my opponent's Azumarill. But luckily for me, he actually stays in and goes for the knockoff again as I go for the Drain Punch just to take it out. And my opponent's reasoning is anticipating my switch in, possibly into the Slowbro again. But I'm just being very conservative, making the safe plays because there's no need to be aggressive. If we want to go into this stalemate situation where we keep walling each other, I know I'm going to eventually win because of the reasons I stated previously. So I went for a very safe play and it paid off greatly. And with Bisharp out of the way, this means my Slowbro is a lot more powerful. So here he's going to bring in his Victini. I'm scared of any fire type move, and I know I can take the hit with the Slowbro, but unfortunately for me, he actually does get a critical hit, and I want to conserve this Slowbro at a decent amount of health because, like I said, it deals with his defensive core, his Mew, and his Venusaur. So instead of actually staying in and taking another blue flare, I'm actually going to fodder off my Clefable, because in terms of how important my Pokemon are, Clefable is not as important as my Slowbro. So I am going to live the hit, but I know I'm going to get taken down by the second hit. And that's fine, because once I get taken down, I can bring in my Manectric. Like I said earlier, the one Pokemon that's standing in a way from my Manectric sweep is actually his Venusaur. So what I'm going to do is actually go for the Flamethrower here, because it'll take down the Victini at this point. If he wants to bring in his Landorus T, like earlier, against like a potential electric type move, I can deal some neutral damage against that. And if he wants to bring in his Venusaur, I can deal super effective damage, which even though he is probably specially defensive with Thick Fat, I still should be able to do a decent amount of damage. So I go for the Flamethrower here. It seems like it's going to be a 2-hit KO, but that's because I did get a critical hit. So I'm not actually sure if my next Flamethrower can take him out. So I'm just instead going to not risk it and go for the Volt Switch instead and bring in my Chesnaught, because he can't really touch me. And if he does have like a recovery type move, I can set up spikes and I can, continuously pressure him. And luckily for me, he actually doesn't go for the recover type move because he gets paralyzed, which means he's forced to stay in and get taken down by a Drain Punch. So luckily for me, with his Venusaur out of the way, this sets up an opportunity for my Manectric to really shine. So here I play kind of reckless because I bring in my Landorus because I wanted to just go straight for the offense to deal as much damage against this Mew as possible. And he actually goes for the Will-O-Wisp. Now luckily for me, he does end up missing the Will-O-Wisp, and it is pretty huge because I now still have the same attack stat and it's not halved. and I can just go for the U-turn and deal a ton of damage against the Mew. Now, in the long run, I don't think it matters too much because I can still deal with the most of my opponent's team with the Slowbro, but it just speeds up the game a lot because of how defensive both of our teams are. So here, my strategy is basically, I'm pretty sure he's not going to go for a third Will-O-Wisp, and he may just go for the Defog as a support type move to get rid of hazards. So I can just bring in my Landorus again and just continuously go for the U-turn to chip away at the Mew's health. And if he doesn't switch out, Mew is gonna lose a lot of HP. And if he does switch out, then I can get switch initiative. Actually though, in this situation, I actually kind of make a misplay. I go for the Earthquake because I just really wanted to take down the Mew, and I was getting a little too greedy here. And you can see how greedy I was by staying in or bringing in my Landorus against Mew in the first place. So unfortunately for me, he predicts my Earthquake, and he keeps outplaying me here. And I am basically just going to stay in because I want to scout what kind of set this Landorus is. And he goes for the Earthquake, which is great because, one, it doesn't deal much damage, and the fact that he kept going, or he went for such an aggressive play, again, it shows that he is choiced in some way, most likely banded. So I'm free just to go for the Stone Edge here. And knowing that he doesn't want to constantly lose HP from Stone Edge, I'm going to go for Earthquake as he switches into his Azumarill. So this is really great because I am able to take down his Azumarill, and I'm starting to break down the rest of my opponent's team. So now with that Azumarill taken down, he goes right back into his Landorus, and because he's banded and can deal a decent amount of damage with Stone Edge, plus I have like -2 attack now with all those intimidates, I'm going to switch out. And I'm going to go ahead and bring in my Chesnaught because he really can't do much against me. Even if he goes for a knockoff or an Earthquake, it shouldn't be doing much. And with my defensive core still basically in play, my Chesnaught Slowbro, he really can't do much against me. So here he brings in his Mew, which is obviously his counter and his only counter at this point against my Chesnaught. And I'm just going to go ahead and go for the Leech Seed on the anticipated switch just to continuously whittle away at this Mew's health. I think I'm still going to go on the offensive. I believe I bring in the Manectric here because I know I can live any single one hit, and I can just go straight for the offensive and go for the Thunderbolt. So here, I finally bring in my Manectric as he either goes for the Will-O-Wisp or goes for the Psyshock. It doesn't matter at this point because now that I have Manectric in play, he doesn't really have any switch-ins, and I can 2-hit KO or 1-hit KO the rest of my opponent's team. So at this point, the match is basically settled as long as there's no surprises that actually happen. So here, I just go for the Hidden Power Ice because if he brings in any Pokemon, it would be his Landorus, and I can take it out with the Hidden Power Ice. And if he stays in, that's fine because he can't really do anything against me anyways, and I can just take it down with continuous HP Ices. So that's perfectly fine. I actually don't know what set his Landorus is, if he is Choice Banded or Choice Scarfed. So HP Ice is generally a safe play because if I take down the Landorus on a switch, then that's really great, and I can don't really have to worry about if he's Scarfed or not. So that's exactly what happens. He brings in his Landorus on the HP Ice, and I'm able to take him out. And the last couple of Pokemon are at a low amount of HP, and I really don't have to worry about them outspeeding me, and I can take them down with Thunderbolt. So that is going to be the match. Though I did end up taking this match, there are a couple of things I could have done to improve my playstyle. And the first thing is to not be as greedy. For example, bringing the Landorus against the Will-O-Wisp. It was a very greedy play. And a lot of times that really hurts me, trying to be greedy and trying to speed up matches when even though there could be a stalemate, I would be winning that stalemate. Another thing that I could have improved on is kind of saving my Heatran early. It would have been a big help to have Heatran late game, and losing it early on against a Focus Blast was definitely not a good thing. So I hope you guys enjoyed this battle. Feel free, if you enjoyed the battle, to leave a like and leave a comment, and stay tuned for the comment question of the day. And if you haven't subscribed already and you enjoyed my content, feel free to join the Pika crew by subscribing. So this is the ThePikaWu. I'm signing out, guys, and until next time, peace out.